This podcast is sponsored by Broadband with a Local Accent.
Hallo und willkommen von der albumble. What's German for podcast?
Hallo und willkommen in unserem albumble Podcast.
Yeah.
Wir haben noch ein Album Review. I don't know what review is.
Reviewed von dieser PC oder Handy oder iPod or whatever you. What do people listen to stuff on these days?
Oder Kassettspieler.
Yes.
Ja.
Der Minidisc.
Ja. Das Compact Disc
8-Track
Anlage. 8-Track. I'm sure even the Germans never called it 8-Track.
Hello everybody. Welcome to Albumble, where we review albums we didn't review the first time around. I'm Anne.
And I'm not.
Yeah,
Hooray!
let you do it today. Right, we've got obviously a German feel because we are reviewing a German band.
Yes.
Not necessarily in German.
No.
Which
I was looking. I had a brief look through their discography. Have they done anything in German?
I think the odd one or two, but they
Okay.
have been very much in English, which
Yes.
is quite surprising because a lot of the Neue Deutsche Welle stuff that was going on at that time was very much in German.
Although a lot of that was rather more punky and post-punk sort of thing, whereas this is very much in its synth-pop roots, isn't it? So, yes, today we're sponsored by Isn't Technology Wonderful, having just taken a good 15 minutes to find out where I saved the notes for this and on which computer it was, and then I found out, and then I thought it had only saved the first song's worth of notes, and then
but it didn't.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into this podcast, have we got any notes for previous incumbents?
Dan's doing some shows in the run-up to Christmas.
Yes, he's got his album.
He's plugging his new album, which I think is going to be called Space.
Yeah.
Although with him it's impossible to tell.
Yeah, but he might have changed his mind.
There are some great pictures, which he keeps saying are not album covers.
Yeah, but they very much are.
They look superb.
Yes.
They're great looking things. And he's also kept up the sort of orangey blue colour palette that he used for his last one, which I rather like as well. So that's been going on.
Yeah. And then we had the big Eurovision news.
Yeah.
Which was that the Netherlands are doing Eurovision, but Joost has politely declined.
Joost Revision 2 will not happen.
Well,
for the time being.
Not this year anyway.
No, next year.
Next year or the year after.
Yeah.
Yes. So we kind of like sad, but also great sigh of relief.
Yeah.
It's too soon.
I think you're right. It's better to let it rest, and also creatively to let himself come up with something else that means that much to him, which I'm not sure he ever will do, to be honest.
No.
But we could be in very interesting times. So,
shall we carry on
with
reviewing Alphaville's Forever Young?
Yes, this is from 1984.
1984, and it was their first album, I believe. So, yes.
And very much their breakthrough disc.
Yes, everywhere.
Yes, yeah. Although not with the same song everywhere, which I'm sure we will be discussing when we go through track by track.
Very odd.
So let's have a look through the tracks individually. So the album kicks off, as is traditional, with track 1.
Yes.
Which in this case is Victory of Love.
Yes. So this kind of sets out the technological vision.
Right.
I think, because it is very much a synth album, although many of the tracks do have other percussive and orchestrated instruments on it. I think there's a lot on this album, and maybe I am reading too much into it.
Okay.
But I always associate this album with... I always think about the fact that the people in the band and people of that age would have been those babies or very young children when the wall came up.
Right, okay, yeah.
And I just kind of think it's this thing of, why is it all happening? There's an essence of, there's people over there.
Yeah.
Why are they over there? What are they doing?
Yeah.
You know.
Why are we distant
Why are
from
we
them?
distant? And I think there's a lot of... He talks about in the song about there being a shift in the air.
Right. It's very perceptive from 1984 when the Iron Curtain was still very much in place.
Yes. Whether it's just a kind of thinking about, you know, it says even in the first verse it says there's a shift in the air. Could we get it together ever? He's probably not talking about that, but there is actually a east. I think there's a few east-west kind of questionings going on. Also, what we get here is Marion Gold's very unusual delivery.
Yes,
because his voice is extraordinarily wide.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think so, because his voice is quite talkative.
Yeah.
And is very easy to listen to. And most of the time is very cleanly delivered. It's not mumbly.
No.
Plus it's not too tonic either. It's not, you know, like sometimes it can...
Yes,
It has that kind of nasal... He does have that kind of nasal quality, but... his English is very good.
Yes.
Anyway.
The comparison I made, particularly on this track, not so much later on, is Peter Hepner from Wolfstein and loads of solo material now. Because it's, as you say, it's a lot of those qualities. It's clearness.
Yes.
A lot of time there are very emotive things being said.
Yes.
Without a great deal of emotion attached to them. They are being stated, they are being delivered to you. I really liked how sparse this was at the beginning. It starts from nothing, which I think as a band is a great way to start off your first album with this introduction building up in the way that your sound has been built as a group. The strings in this track sound very much like an artist called Nigel Bates, who did a lot of library music in the early 1980s for Chapel.
Maybe they had a lot of pages of German CFAX.
His music was used on there, which is how I know about him. Yes, I think there were very slight shades of Depeche Mode in there, but possibly with more of a hook than they normally manage to do. And I think this would have made a logical single.
Yes,
and
but
I've gone through this album and thought that there are a few times I will say this sounds like a single,
but it wasn't.
But they weren't. No, and it's not that they weren't singles; they weren't even promoted anywhere as. So the idea was never there to release those songs as singles. But great way to start off.
Lovely.
And already this was somewhat blowing my expectations out of the water with this, because I wasn't overly sure what to expect from this. And I thought we could have had a number of sort of very similar songs. Because it's not unusual for a band when they're starting out like this to record an album which is basically very similar songs for 9 or 10 tracks.
Yes.
But that's
These are very cohesive, though.
Oh, yes,
it's a very cohesive album.
Yeah.
But they're not too samey.
No, there is a good variety amongst this. So...
we then go on to Summer in Berlin.
Yeah.
And have you got anything?
I thought this was a little bit more pedestrian.
Yes.
And this is quite Route 1 synth pop.
Yes.
To me. I did read something about this which wasn't what I took away from the song myself, but having looked further into the lyrics, I'm sure you'll have more to tell me.
So one of the things I know about this song is that right at the very beginning, he talks about, got to get the 17th of June.
Yeah.
Now, do you know what the 17th of June is?
I read this and I've forgotten again since.
So, I don't know exactly, but it's something to do with there was an uprising or some kind of rebellion against East Germany, or East Germans rebelling against...
Oh, that's right, it was the Stasi rebellion.
Or something. And so this then actually caused this song to then be banned in East Germany because of...
I did read that a very heavily edited version of this album was released.
Hence why I said about the fact that there's lots of little dewdrops of politics, and because I guess if they'd just grown up, they're asking questions, they're wondering why things are happening. This it is quite Route 1. It talks about what it's like in the city, and kind of he also goes about being in the middle of the crossroads, which again could be a east-west kind of thing, talking about the exhausts from the cars, and obviously the cars in East Germany might have been a bit more exhausting than the West German ones. It's got that same synthy feel, so it kind of follows on quite nicely, but also gives the album a little bit of room to breathe, especially because we've got a lot of bangers on this track, especially what's about to come as well. What are you looking up?
No, that's all right. I was having a look because I didn't know whether the East German pressing of this was actually listed on Discogs, which I don't think it is, which surprises me because it's normally very thorough in stuff like this. Yes, but no, I concur with a lot of that, and politically it's a very interesting time that I think perhaps the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Iron Curtain in the late 80s, early 90s seemed to happen so quickly.
Yes.
And obviously the film Goodbye Lenin touches on this as well. So there is a huge movement, and I think the nostalgia that came out in Germany later in the 90s was a fact of, wow, this moved so fast.
Yeah.
And we lost
so much.
A lot of, or almost we forgot a lot of
not things. Everything that was East German was necessarily bad.
No.
It was just different.
Yeah. But it's an interesting time, and I think this is quite a good echo from that, from at least one perspective. So on to track 3, which is the obviously very well known in the UK.
Yes.
Big in Japan.
Big in Japan. So obviously you knew this song.
Yes.
Before. So what did you have to review this much?
I still listen to it again because obviously it's not something that gets played loads on.
No, but it is basically one hit really here.
Although you wouldn't believe it.
Because, no. It's as I think when I chose this album, a lot of people actually know songs. But only as samples or as rehashes.
Yes, we've got a lot of that to come, haven't we? I think if there were ever a song that were reminiscent of 1984 as an aural soundscape, this represents it beautifully. The vocals have been produced to almost a shrill sound, I think, in the production on this, which gives a great atmosphere of distance and aloofness, perhaps, from the song itself. So what do you have to say about...
So, I read an interview with Marion Gold. And what if I told you this song is about drugs?
Wouldn't surprise me.
So apparently he says that this is about two lovers trying to get off heroin.
Okay.
So
you're big on the horse tonight.
Yes, because they talk about crystal snowflakes all around my head. Yeah, so
right,
drugs.
Okay.
There's also a great line about saying, "Shall I stay here at the zoo?"
Right.
And apparently the zoo, obviously there's a zoo in Berlin. But there is a tram stop. That was like the local junkie.
Oh, right, okay.
That's where you met the dealer.
Yes.
So it's got a bit of a double meaning. I suppose in another way you could see it as if I suppose the idea of being big in Japan suggests that you could, if the people around you don't appreciate you, there's always someone,
there's another audience
somewhere, someplace that will get you. Which is also an interesting.
It's one of the things,
and also we discussed about the fact that it's actually just the name of another band.
Yes. Whenever somebody says, "Oh, that's huge in Japan," that's it's always something that comes up as a warning signal to me. Because there are a lot of acts who go very big in Japan very briefly. And then disappear again. So I think through the 80s and 90s, they were a very faddy culture. In terms of pop music, especially. So I always become a little wary of when people say that, because yes, it was big at a point, and then seemed to subside again.
I suppose that nowadays it is seen as a bit as a, not Japan itself, but having that kind of is quite I don't even know it's a bit niche. Although some people on purposely, should we say, I suppose that the thing nowadays wouldn't be being big in Japan, it would be South Korean people being big everywhere else.
It's
the other way around now.
It's also a case that now it is much easier to be famous somewhere without actually going there.
No, that's true.
So it's another interesting time capsule of the time. Seems to be a theme that we're coming back to, which is not something I'd realised when I was listening to it. Is there's a lot of time capsule-y type stuff here, which to have recorded something like that is one hell of an achievement, because that's something that is not easy to do intentionally.
No.
But to take a lot of then current references and to be referencing all that without sounding crass. So thinking about pop acts now who make records, and there are records that were made 10 years ago that have references in them that just make us cringe. So track 4 is To Germany with Love.
Okay. So again, I feel like the the politics is coming up, because obviously they're talking about Germany being the same country, but also there's another Germany.
Yes.
So is he talking about to his own country with love, or is he talking about the other Germany, or is he talking about wanting it to be a Germany together?
Yeah.
Again,
because it could easily be a letter to both sides of the split.
There's actually more politics, because verse 3 starts with triumph over bygone sorrow can in unity be won, which is apparently part of the East German national anthem.
Right, okay.
So there are obviously direct references to there being a different Germany.
Yes.
Yes. So
I very much liked the pace and the earnest delivery of this.
Yes.
I did wonder if there was the busy bass work sound that's going on. That sounds quite Duran Duran-y to me.
Yes.
So obviously, I mean, this is could be a couple of years after that. So whether that's been informed by that.
Yeah.
I really liked the instrumental ending of it, which has the sort of sampling and various what we would call now found sound.
Yes.
Put in there.
Yes.
I thought that works really well, and it sounds it brings it to a chaotic crescendo at the end, really, which I really enjoyed.
Although the ending also is rather quite positive.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're saying to Germany with love.
Yes.
Kind of like they want to make things work better.
Yeah.
They want to move things forward.
There is a general air of optimism going on all the way through, isn't there? So, yeah. Right, on to track number 5, which is Fallen Angel.
So this... Oh, I'm on the wrong one. So this song is... has got a very odd structure, especially in the choruses, because he goes almost falsetto esque. It's slightly mysterious. We're not quite sure who these people are, whether they are aliens, as in, well, not aliens like little green men.
Yeah.
I mean, like aliens as in from another place.
Yeah.
From another country. So it's very emotive.
Yeah.
In that way as well. It is we've had a lot of strong stuff.
Yes.
And we have needed to have a few breaks. And this would have been also the end of side 1.
Yes.
As well. So having something a little bit more frivolous is a good way to end the side on.
Yeah, I thought this was, up to this point, probably the most logical song that should have come out as a single.
Yes.
Because it feels like...
It's got a lot of earworms.
Yeah, and it feels quite conventional pop songy compared to a lot of the stuff that's been tried up till now on there. So yeah, I enjoyed this rather, and again, I'm somewhat mystified as to why this was never pushed as a single. So over on side 2, we start off with a song that nobody's ever heard of, called Forever Young.
Well, you say that. You say that no one's ever heard of it. People have heard of it, but they don't realise that this band wrote it.
No.
They don't realise that this is by them.
No.
I don't know if when they wrote this song, they realised how much of the words pension plan.
But then, I don't deny any band who have come up with something like that. I don't mind that the Zootons are perhaps still living off Valerie.
Well, yes.
And things like that, even though it's not their recording that's become famous of it.
So we've got a lot of the synth, the wave, but we've also got a lot of... It comes very orchestral.
Yes, yeah.
Near the end. We've also still got a lot of the politics talk. I also read somewhere that they initially wanted... Now... Oh, the bit where he says the music's been played by the madman... Apparently the line before then, they were going to talk about... There was going to be a line about they clapping the fascists.
Right,
and decided to change it.
Yeah.
Because they thought people might think they're applauding and therefore supporting that rather than mocking them. It's a very oddly made song.
Yeah.
The whole rhythm and the way that it's structured is so odd.
Yeah.
That it must have been... It's the kind of song that if you try and describe... I can imagine what the sheet music for this must look like.
It looks like a cloud.
Yes, it's just... So, yeah, I mean, it's been done... It's been used by so many different people. Yeah. I think there's even a version at the moment that's out that I think is somebody like Ava Max or somebody like that.
That doesn't need to exist.
No.
Go on. Live Google time.
Young, 2024. Oh no, don't. Oh look, Ava Max, David Guetta, and Alphaville.
No.
Forever Young.
No. Right. Slight tangent here. David Guetta has not made a decent song since he broke up with Chris Willis.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be honest, I've listened to some of Chris Willis's solo stuff as well. Neither of them have made a decent song since they stopped working.
Were they greater than the sum of their parts?
Absolutely. Because David Guetta makes...
his stuff.
Used to make a decent dance music sound. And Chris Willis is an amazing vocalist. Yeah. But they don't work apart.
No.
And yeah, anyway.
Yes. Let's go on to Forever Young again.
The version of Forever Young that I'm more familiar with was the cover version by Interactive.
Yes.
Ramon Senker and Jens Lissat, I think, from about 1995-96, which eventually got a UK release about 2 years after it was around in Germany. And yeah, that's something I'm very fond of because that got me into Interactive as a band. Yeah. And very odd history. It's very difficult trying to piece together what they did as a band. But that was, I think, their breakthrough as a mainstream act. They'd had quite a lot of success releasing club singles up to that point, but then that broke them over into the pop charts. I'm quite glad that the Interactive version exists. Yeah. Because to me, that's the definitive dance version, and this is the candlelight version.
Yes.
Because the whole ambient soundscape that's going on around this song, and the way that the words are floating around inside the cloud, I think is a really good comparison of the two to have.
Yes.
I wonder if this draws inspiration from the sort of the French chanson style song,
possibly,
because this feels like something that you can see a Frenchman there on stage living it, not performing
like
it,
a
living.
Jacques Brel.
Yeah, living a performance
Stromae's
of this.
version of Forever Young.
Is that like Taylor's version?
Yeah.
Or is it? Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah, that's really an interesting thought to me.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously a great song.
Yes, it didn't chart though when it was released in the UK.
No, I think it scraped into the very scrag end of the top 100.
Which is just...
but then, if you think about how the UK singles market works then, and the radio airplay and things like that, if you'd had a big hit with Big in Japan, and then said, "Oh right, now we're releasing this," this is very different.
Yes.
If perhaps this had been released and the album had been successful in the UK after the first single, there might have been a bit more enthusiasm behind this. But yeah, it's not surprising that it didn't do very much in the UK.
And it only charted in the US because it was mooted, and she did actually do it. Laura Branigan, off of ripping off Italo disco songs, did a version on her album. So they re-released their version, like a couple of years later, just to kind of, I don't know, get some publicity, make a bit of money. Yeah. I don't know what her version sounds like.
I'm not sure I want to know what her version sounds like, but track 7 takes us to In the Mood, which is another change of direction and style.
Yes, a very different... This is quite... a lot of the songs up to now have been quite... not dreamy in a physical way, but dreamy as in, like, about... kind of describing things. This one seems quite narrative.
Yeah.
Actually telling a story, telling somebody to kind of stop doing things and, stop believing in themselves and getting on with things and finding courage and being able to move forward. It's a lot more pushy. Than some of the other ones have been up to now.
Yeah, I thought this is another one that I'd written down Depeche Mode about. Yeah, because they feel like an influence on this. I really liked that sort of chimey, synthy xylophone sound that's going on in there. That's a beautiful sound, which I think is a good calling card for this song.
It does definitely make it very 80s.
Oh, yeah.
There are certain sounds that you can kind of make the same thing on modern technology, but it doesn't quite have that almost analogness.
Yeah. What tends to happen now is that because the sound is generated by by software rather than hardware, it tends to be too perfect. With the older analog synths in the early to mid 80s, there were always little imperfections in how something sounded because of quite often because of how the hardware works. And it wouldn't be able to do exactly what you'd expect it to do on a song. So that sort of thing is quite interesting as well. On to Sounds Like a Melody.
Yes.
Or, as we know it, You Got to Let the Music. Come on.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously at the time I personally had no idea about that being a sample.
No, likewise.
I never knew.
It was a long time after.
It was now. Who was it?
Lichtenfels.
Yeah. So he did. They, I think. That did a cover version of that in the early
2003. I'll go for.
And that was when I first heard that sample in that song.
Yeah.
And I then realised that, like, that wasn't just something that they made in 1990s and thought, oh, that's a good tune. They'd actually taken it from something else. And then you were able to go back and go, actually, they didn't come up with that idea either.
Yeah.
That's from somebody else again.
Yeah. No, the Lichtenfels version of it is a lot more, is actually punchy, relatively faithful to the original as well.
Yes.
No, it's really interesting because obviously as somebody who became more musically aware during the early 90s, Capella's You've Got to Let the Music, and it's only a small part of this. That's a small part of this song, which they obviously used an awful lot. I found really interesting. Aside from the sort of artists who were around in the early 80s doing things like Hooked on Classics and that sort of thing, I don't think there were many people mixing this sort of synth-pop sound with classical music as well.
It's kind of like what they do nowadays, isn't it? They do like the trancey versions with an orchestra at the proms.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, obviously, the UK has Pete Tong, Germany has Alex Christensen, both doing the same thing. This is the big hits of when we were properly famous, and we're producing
like
them.
We're doing Pacific States with an orchestra.
Yeah. Which is nuts when you think about the genesis of those songs, and they've ended up being performed by orchestras of people. And you do wonder if somebody had the vision to do that back when they were originally being produced, would that have become a thing back then? Because obviously there was, by the late 90s, we had the epic house sound. With Faithless and Crescendo and acts like that who were doing this really dramatic stuff and occasionally introducing classical sounds into sort of big thumping house music. Which is a really interesting sound, but could it have happened 10 years earlier? Would be the question.
This is another song that's got the quite talky verses and then the very high chorus. I was just looking, I've written down it's 4:42.
Yeah.
Which, considering, I mean, that's quite long for a song nowadays.
Yes.
But number one, it doesn't feel that long.
No.
Especially when so much of that is the elongated orchestral ending.
Yes. Now I think it was this one that I looked up, and there is a longer version. There was a proper 12-inch mix of it done.
Yeah, well, I did wonder whether there were different versions of this song.
Yeah, there is the long version on the 12-inch single of this, although not especially wider, special long version, 7 minutes 42.
Okay.
Strings from the string section of the Deutsche Oper in Berlin.
There we go. And what's also interesting about the ending bit is how, even though it goes classical, it also goes double time.
Yes.
Which is kind of almost going for that kind of disco.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is way after this song was released, but I always think about the sample. I can't remember what it is now. The sample in Utah Saints.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah.
Like in its original.
Yes.
That was kind of a bit funky, but wasn't quite used in such a hard way.
Yeah.
That probably didn't. Yeah.
That was in Ohio by Utah Saints.
No, it wasn't. It was a single. It was I Believe in You. That one. I Believe in Me. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So now we move on to track 9, the penultimate one on the album, which is Lies.
So I wonder again if there's a political, thinking about living so closely to another entity, how much is real, how much is not, how much is propaganda, how much is, real.
Yes.
But also thinking about, in particular, the lies of the entertainment industry.
Which would be a surprise, because that's being very cynical very early in your career, isn't it, for a band that were making their very first album?
This is a hit, and that's a fake.
Yes.
Is the line. And it's quite an upbeat song. I almost feel like this song could have been a cover version of like a Jersey Boys type doo-wop.
Yeah, that's something I'd written down as well.
Motown-y type.
It's got upbeat American daytime radio pop song written all over it. And again, to me, this sounds like a single.
Yeah.
And perhaps something like that would be a more obvious single than Forever Young had been. I again really like this. Lots of hooky sing-along bits to it, and nothing really to dislike. Now, something that was a single was track 10, the Jet Set, although it was the fourth one that was lifted. So by that time, I think they were getting a little bit short on material. It's a very Pet Shop Boysy sound going on here. And I think there's a lot of social commentary here that nobody else had really got onto, because I think that was quite nascent in the UK at the time and was just coming to sort of yuppie culture and things like that. So
I also think when they're thinking about going to the East-West German, it's like I said, we are part of the Jet Set, and we do have some. We have some freedom.
Yeah.
We have some. We have some. We don't have certain pressures that a lot of people do. So there's a kind of freedom to that they are saying we have, without necessarily saying la la la, aren't we great?
Yeah.
Kind of.
I think it's
other
more,
people might.
I think it's more mocking the culture of having that freedom and the ability to do anything, and perhaps the class of people at that time who were embracing that freedom with reckless abandon. I think it's more a mockery of them rather than an embracing of that culture.
Yes. In the last verse, there is a mention of Enrico,
right,
which we think is Enrico Caruso, who was an opera singer.
Oh, right, okay.
So, because there's Enrico's dead, but still okay. We dance the streets.
Yeah.
So maybe kind of saying that, that kind of music is dead, but we're still dancing to our own beat.
Yeah.
Music has moved on.
Yes.
And this is what our beat now, rather than dancing to what our forefathers were.
I think it's
appreciating.
It's an interesting thing that the more music there is, there's a following for. There are smaller followings for lots of different things.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons that I don't think pop music is so universal now. Is because we're so... Everybody is into their own thing.
Yes. You've got to stan.
But that's another part of it, isn't it? You're everybody's taught, you can have exactly what you want. You can choose exactly what you want all the time.
Yeah.
And... The net result of that is the loss of a collective experience a lot of the time. So, right, I think that brings us to the end of
that is
the track
all
by track.
10 songs.
Yep.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that.
I did. It was very different to what I had been expecting. I think I'd expected it all to be quite po-faced and and very mawkish is the wrong word, but very sort of straight-faced, serious synth pop.
Yeah.
But it's not. I think there's an awful lot going on there.
Yes.
Which is very interesting.
And obviously Marigold is still going.
Yes, yeah,
as Alpha. I don't know whether the people who were on the instruments are still the same people, but they still do a lot of concerts and appear on TV shows, and I think they still do a lot of their old and new songs with different shticks to them. Obviously, kind of like the industrial, that kind of electro pop industrial sound.
Yes.
They've been able to kind of beef up or goth up or.
And to be honest, the advent of all the technology that has come along since then has made that sort of thing a lot more straightforward to do. It has made the sound a lot more customizable, and they can make things now sound exactly how they want to do. But it's also interesting the fact that they haven't really had a serious break. I mean, there's been a couple of 7-year gaps between albums, but they have been
churning them out.
Yeah, they have been releasing a lot of music all the time, and have not spent a great deal of time working on their own. Most of the time they've been signed. There are very few bands out there who keep going and going, and at every point they're signed on a recognised record label rather than working off their own back.
Yeah.
So it shows there's a substantial level of success keeps coming with them. So they obviously have a very loyal following.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's that then.
That's that done. Our next album.
Okay. Oh yeah, because it's your choice.
Yes. I wondered if we might go slightly tangential from this.
Okay.
And have the album Touche by Interactive.
Okay.
Which features a cover of Forever Young.
Okay. Interactive. Did you just have writing it down so I don't forget? Okay.
So that
when's that from?
That is from 1995, 96. Okay. Hold on, I'll answer that, because a little peek behind the curtain here. I didn't actually know what I was going to choose as the 95 that one came out. I didn't actually know what I was going to choose at the start of this podcast, so we'll go for that. Which is, I mean, it's not massively disconnected from this album.
No.
Because obviously we're still in Germany again.
Yeah, we're still in Germany.
And we've got a lot of synthesizers on the go. There's a bit of a different vibe going on. So we can enjoy that over the next couple of weeks and then report back to you.
Yes, so if you want to listen to that and come back in a few weeks' time, and you can then listen to what we think about it.
We'd love to have your company.
Yes. If you want to get in touch with us, find us at albumble on Twitter, or find us on there, send a pigeon round or something.
Yeah.
You can find Albumble.
We're in every chat room in the world.
In GeoCities.
Yeah, on GeoCities.
And Messenger, Blackberries.
Blackberry Messenger.
We're on that.
We're on the bottom of at least 3 ducks on every hooker duck store in every fairground in Suffolk. Yeah, so you can get in touch with us through that as well.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
Or just look us up on Spotify.
Yeah.
Like most people seem to.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah, it seems to be our most popular.
Okay.
Outgoing.
So if you're listening to us on God's sakes, if you're listening to us on Spotbots, enjoy the adverts.
Right. Are we done?
Yes. Thanks for your company, and we'll speak again soon.
Bye.
Bye.